Shout out to Christine Brennan. Team USA, y'all need to stop playing. Hold on, wait a second. Y'all will recognize and appreciate Caitlin Clark as the face of this whole get up. Nobody's checking for these other, no disrespect, great basketball players. That don't mean people checking for you. You mean to tell me y'all put other people's face all on the Team USA stuff and y'all left Caitlin Clark off of it?
That clip right there captures what millions of basketball fans have been screaming for months. Team USA made a decision about Caitlin Clark that didn't just raise eyebrows. It triggered a full-blown crisis in women's basketball that we're still dealing with today. And here's what makes this situation absolutely wild. They didn't just leave her off the Olympic roster. They scrubbed her from the promotional materials, the face of women's basketball. Invisible. Like she never existed. Let's be crystal clear about what we're unpacking here. This isn't about one player feeling slighted. This is about USA Basketball making a calculated choice that backfired so spectacularly. The ripple effects are still shaking the foundation of women's hoops. We're talking about viewership collapse, merchandising disasters, international growth opportunities completely fumbled, and the whole time, the one person who could have prevented this catastrophe was sitting at home watching it unfold. Many of you have been connecting these dots for weeks, and you were absolutely right to be furious. The numbers don't lie. The consequences are real, and somebody needs to explain how the governing body of American basketball managed to fumble the biggest opportunity women's sports has seen in decades. If you believe the story behind the story matters, hit that like button right now. It tells us we're asking the right questions, because what happened with Caitlin Clark and Team USA goes way deeper than basketball politics. This is about recognition, respect, and the future of the game itself. Christine Brennan just laid it out in terms that should terrify USA basketball leadership. Viewership dropped at the Paris Olympics, not stayed flat, dropped. For a women's basketball team that was supposed to dominate headlines and capture new audiences, that's not just disappointing. That's a complete organizational failure. And here's the part that should keep executives up at night. They had the solution sitting right in front of them, and they chose to ignore it. The timeline of this disaster matters. Brennan broke this story around midnight going into Saturday morning, giving USA Basketball about 60 hours of absolute chaos to manage. But the real story isn't the 60 hours after the news broke. It's the months before, when decision-makers had every opportunity to recognize what was staring them in the face. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another talented player. She was a cultural phenomenon who transcended basketball. Let's talk about what USA Basketball actually did here. They assembled their Olympic roster without Clark. That decision alone sparked debate, but you could make basketball arguments on both sides. Veteran experience, team chemistry, defensive versatility, whatever. But then they took it a step further. When they created promotional graphics for Team USA women's basketball, they featured other players. They used those faces to represent American basketball on the global stage. And Caitlin Clark, the player who had just completed the most watched season in women's college basketball history, was nowhere to be seen. You were onto something when you noticed how tone-deaf this looked, because it wasn't just about marketing. It was about understanding where the momentum was. Clark had spent an entire season bringing eyes to women's basketball that had never been there before. Casual fans who didn't know Diana Taurasi from Maya Moore suddenly knew everything about Caitlin Clark. That's not normal athlete popularity. That's crossover star power. The promotional materials decision reveals something deeper about how USA Basketball views the sport. They had a choice. Use the player generating unprecedented attention to promote women's basketball to the world, or stick with established names and traditional hierarchy. They chose hierarchy. They chose comfort. And in doing so, they chose decline. Let's filter out the noise and look at what this decision actually cost. International merchandising, global brand development, media attention in a crowded Olympic landscape, Every single one of these opportunities required star power to cut through. You can have the best basketball team in the world, but if nobody's watching, if nobody's buying jerseys, if sports editors are choosing other stories, you've failed the mission of growing the game.
Yeah, well, I've given it, as you know, over the last 60 hours. I broke the news right around midnight, Friday to Saturday morning. And I think on both fronts, merit and publicity, you, of course, mentioned it, it's just a total swing and a miss by the national governing body, by USA Basketball, just a missed opportunity. And but I'll start with my answer by saying I have covered this women's.
Brennan called it exactly what it was, a total swing and a miss by the national governing body. But here's what makes her assessment so damning. She's not some random commentator throwing hot takes. She's a journalist who has covered Olympic basketball for decades. She understands how these events work. She knows what it takes to capture attention when you're competing against swimming, gymnastics, track and field, and 30 other sports for headlines. And she's telling you flat out, without Caitlin Clark, women's basketball got buried. The merit versus publicity debate misses the point entirely. This was never an either-or situation. You can build the best team on merit while still recognizing that publicity matters, that global attention matters, that inspiring the next generation of players around the world matters. USA Basketball treated these as competing interests when they should have been complementary goals. Reading between the lines of Brennan's reporting reveals the internal calculation that went wrong. USA Basketball assumed they could win gold medals and generate excitement through winning alone. They believed the product on the court would be enough. They were wrong. The Paris Olympics proved them wrong with declining viewership numbers that should have been impossible, given the momentum women's basketball was carrying. Here's what you need to understand about Olympic media coverage. Sports editors make brutal decisions every single day of the Games. Multiple gold medals happen simultaneously. Historic performances compete for front-page space. World records fall while you're writing about other world records. In that environment, you need story hooks that transcend pure athletic achievement. You need names that casual fans recognize. You need stars that make editors say, "We have to cover this." Caitlin Clark was that hook. She was that name. She was that star. And USA Basketball left her home. The comparison to traditional Olympic rosters doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Yes, teams usually prioritize veterans and proven international players. But usual went out the window the moment Clark's final college season generated the kind of numbers that make networks renegotiate contracts. Nothing about her impact was usual. Nothing about the opportunity was usual. And responding with usual thinking guaranteed an unusual level of failure. Think about the promotional materials specifically. These images represented American basketball to the entire world. They appeared on social media, in Olympic venues, on broadcast graphics, and in international publications. Every single one of those placements was a chance to say, this is who we are. This is what American women's basketball looks like right now. And the message USA Basketball chose to send was, we're not sure who our biggest star is, so we'll just use some familiar faces and hope it works out. It didn't work out. The viewership numbers prove it didn't work out. And somewhere in USA Basketball headquarters, somebody should be answering for why they thought it would. Brennan just explained the fundamental problem with Olympic basketball coverage, and it's something decision makers apparently never considered. When you're competing against 30 other gold medals on the same day, you don't just need a good team. You need a reason for sports editors to choose your story over Simone Biles, over women's soccer, over whatever historic moment is happening in the pool. If you're just joining us, drop a comment right now telling us what you think USA Basketball should have done differently. Caitlin Clark was that reason. She was the editorial hook that would have forced coverage even when other massive stories were breaking. Sports desks would have had to ask themselves, can we really not cover the Caitlin Clark Olympic story? That's the kind of gravitational pull that creates sustained attention. That's the kind of star power that ensures your sport doesn't get buried on page 6 behind swimming results. But USA Basketball made a different calculation. They looked at their roster of proven champions and assumed excellence would be enough. They saw veterans who had won multiple gold medals and figured that experience would generate its own storylines. They were thinking like basketball purists in a media landscape that doesn't reward pure basketball thinking. The media rewards narratives, personalities, and accessible entry points for casual fans. Let's get into rumor territory for a moment, because multiple sources have been whispering about what really happened during roster selection. There were conversations about Clark's defensive limitations, fair basketball critique. There were discussions about preserving team chemistry that had worked in previous cycles, understandable organizational thinking, but there were also reportedly concerns about disrupting established hierarchies, about what it would mean to center the team around a rookie when veterans had been waiting their turn for years. If these reports are accurate, USA Basketball prioritized comfort over opportunity. They chose internal politics over external impact. And in doing so, they may have set women's basketball back by years in terms of global development.
92, Rich, how the men's team, how that grew basketball around the world, especially for boys and men, and where it reached Africa. Well, the opportunity with Caitlin Clark's popularity, Africa, Europe, Asia. Think of how many number 22 USA jerseys would have been sold. Money that could have then been pumped back in to help have developmental programs.
That dream team comparison should haunt USA Basketball executives. The 1992 men's Olympic team didn't just win gold. It transformed basketball into a truly global sport. It created international stars who inspired millions of kids to pick up a basketball. It generated merchandising revenue that funded developmental programs around the world. It was a cultural export that changed how the world viewed American basketball. Connecting the dots reveals what USA Basketball fumbled with Caitlin Clark. The potential for women's basketball to experience its own dream team moment was sitting right there. You had a player whose popularity was exploding internationally. Social media engagement from Africa, Europe, Asia, showing massive interest in her game. The infrastructure for global merchandising already existed. All they had to do was put the number 22 USA jersey on her and watch the world respond. Think about those jersey sales Brennan mentioned. Not just the revenue, though that matters. Think about what it means when a kid in Kenya or India or China wears a Caitlin Clark USA basketball jersey. That kid is now connected to the sport. That kid might join a developmental program. That kid might become the next generation of international talent that elevates the entire game. Those jerseys weren't just merchandise. They were invitations to a global basketball community. But you can't sell what you don't make. You can't inspire international fans if your biggest star isn't representing the country. And you definitely can't fund developmental programs with revenue you never generated because you left your most marketable player at home. The financial implications extend far beyond jersey sales. Olympic sponsorships get negotiated based on projected visibility. Media rights packages factor in anticipated viewership. Licensing deals depend on star power and international recognition. Every single one of these revenue streams took a hit when Clark wasn't on the roster and wasn't in the promotional materials. These aren't abstract losses. These are real dollars that could have been invested back into growing women's basketball at every level. Many of you have been saying this for weeks. And the numbers are proving you right. The Paris Olympics viewership drop wasn't random bad luck. It was a predictable consequence of removing the sport's biggest draw from the biggest stage. Casual fans who had been pulled into women's basketball by Clark's college career had no reason to tune in to Olympic Games that didn't feature her. Die-hard basketball fans watched anyway, but diehards alone don't move viewership needles in the Olympics. Here's what should terrify anyone who cares about women's basketball's future. This wasn't just a missed opportunity for one Olympic cycle. This was a statement about priorities. It told the world that USA Basketball values traditional selection criteria over cultural momentum. It signaled that established players matter more than expanding the audience, and it demonstrated that the people making decisions don't fully understand the moment women's basketball is in right now. The sport is at an inflection point. You either capitalize on unprecedented attention and convert casual interest into lasting fandom, or you watch that window close as people move on to the next story. USA Basketball had the perfect tool to keep that window open. They chose not to use it. The consequences are still unfolding. International federations that might have invested more in women's programs based on Olympic excitement are reconsidering. Young players around the world who might have been inspired are looking elsewhere. Media outlets that gave women's basketball premium coverage during Clark's college season are pulling back. Each of these ripple effects compounds the original mistake. What happens next matters enormously. Does USA Basketball acknowledge the miscalculation and adjust for future competitions? Do they recognize that the landscape has changed and old playbooks don't work anymore? Or do they double down on traditional thinking and watch women's basketball momentum evaporate? You deserve answers to these questions. The players who were left off promotional materials deserve answers. Most importantly, young girls around the world who could have been inspired by seeing their favorite player on the Olympic stage deserve answers. If you want us to keep investigating how basketball organizations are handling this critical moment for women's sports, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. We're not done unpacking the decisions that shaped the Paris Olympics and what they mean for basketball's future. Next video, we're diving into how the WNBA itself is responding to this Olympic fallout and what veterans are saying behind closed doors about the Clark situation. This is bigger than one roster decision. This is about whether the people running women's basketball understand the opportunity in front of them. And right now, the evidence suggests they don't. We'll keep watching, we'll keep asking questions, and we'll keep holding decision makers accountable. Stay locked in. The story's just getting started.